The grand hall was full of people. Lights were bright. Cameras were ready. It was the biggest music competition of the year. Judges sat at a long table. Musicians from all over the country had come to show their talent. Only one would win. Only one would become a star. At the center of the judges sat Victor Hale, a famous pianist known all over the world. He wore a shiny black suit, a silver watch, and a cold smile. He didn't believe in luck. He believed in perfection. Victor had no time for weak performances. He looked bored as the next name was announced. Contestant number 12, Jeremiah Blake. There was a pause. People looked around confused. The announcer repeated, "Jeremiah Blake?" Then, the backstage curtain moved. A small boy walked out slowly. He was holding a white walking stick. He wore dark glasses. He couldn't see. The crowd went silent. The boy was blind. Victor raised an eyebrow. A few people in the audience chuckled. "A blind pianist," someone whispered. The boy walked carefully to the piano. He felt the edge with his hand, then slowly sat down. His feet didn't even touch the floor. Victor leaned toward the other judges and said loudly, "What's next? A dancing dog." The crowd laughed, but the boy didn't speak, didn't move. He placed his fingers softly on the keys, and then he played one single note. Just one. But it was perfect. So soft, so deep, so full of emotion, it made the room fall completely silent. Even Victor stopped smiling. That one note spoke louder than words. The boy, Jeremiah, started to play more. Each note was like a whisper from the heart, like a memory being shared with the world. The laughter disappeared. The crowd leaned forward. Even the cameras zoomed in closer. Who was this boy? How could someone who couldn't see play like this? Victor crossed his arms. His eyes narrowed. He didn't want to be impressed. He didn't believe this child could be real. But his fingers tapped the table without him noticing. He was following the rhythm. Jeremiah's music was not just a performance. It was a story. 30 minutes earlier, backstage, Jeremiah stood alone, holding his walking stick. He wore a simple sweater and jeans. His hands were shaking. His mother couldn't come. She was working a night shift at the hospital. She had told him, "Play with your heart. That's enough." Jeremiah had never been on a real stage before. He had only practiced on a broken keyboard at home. Some keys didn't even work, but he memorized each note with his ears. He had never owned a piano, never had a teacher, but he had a gift. He heard music in everything, in raindrops, in birds, even in silence. And now, it was his turn to share that gift. Back on stage, Jeremiah continued playing. The judges didn't move. Victor sat up straight now, his eyes locked on the boy's fingers. How? How did this child move with such control, such soul? Victor had trained in the best schools in Europe. He had won awards since he was 10, but he had never played like this. There was no fear in Jeremiah's hands, only feeling. Victor leaned forward, suddenly very serious. Then Jeremiah did something that made Victor's heart jump. The boy changed the tune. It sounded familiar. Too familiar. Victor's eyes widened. It was a melody Victor had written, a piece he had never released. He had only played it once, years ago, in a hospital room, to a dying patient. Victor stood up. His hands were shaking now. How did this boy know that song? Jeremiah played it with perfect detail. Each note, each pause, exactly the way Victor had done it years ago. The crowd looked at Victor confused. Why was the great pianist now pale? The music stopped. Jeremiah slowly lifted his hands from the keys. Silence. Complete silence. No one clapped. No one moved. They were too stunned, too touched, too shaken. Victor took a deep breath, stepped forward, and walked toward the stage. Every eye followed him. Was he going to insult the boy? Was he going to walk out? Or was something bigger about to happen? Jeremiah Blake was born in a quiet town, far from big cities and bright lights. He didn't come from money. He didn't have fancy clothes or expensive toys. And when he was just 2 years old, he lost his sight completely. Doctors said he had a rare eye disease. There was no cure. His mother, Marcia Blake, cried for days. But when she saw her little boy smiling, trying to walk by following sounds, she made a promise. I will never let him feel broken. Marcia worked 2 jobs. Nurse during the day, cleaner at night. She couldn't afford help, but she gave Jeremiah something more powerful than sight. She gave him love. Jeremiah couldn't see, but he could hear everything. The rustle of leaves, the soft drip of a leaky sink, the laughter of other children at the park, and the sound of music. One day when he was 5, he found an old radio in the house. He pressed buttons until it made noise. Suddenly, piano music filled the room. Jeremiah froze. He had never heard something so beautiful. "Mommy," he whispered, "what is that?" Marcia smiled. "That, baby, is a piano." From that day on, Jeremiah would sit close to the radio every night. He would listen for hours, memorizing sounds. He didn't just hear music. He felt it. There was no money for piano lessons, no space in the house for an instrument. So Marcia made Jeremiah a gift. She drew the shape of piano keys on a large piece of cardboard and said, "Pretend this is real. Practice every day." Jeremiah ran his fingers over the flat paper, tapping notes that weren't there. He imagined the sounds. In his mind, they were perfect. At age 9, Jeremiah joined a free music program at the community center. The teacher, Mr. Rhodes, didn't expect much when the blind boy walked in. But when Jeremiah sat at the old piano and played a simple melody from memory, Mr. Rhodes gasped. "Where did you learn that?" he asked. "I heard it on the radio," Jeremiah replied. "I remembered." Mr. Rhodes tested him with harder songs. Jeremiah played each one, no mistakes. No sheet music, only sound. Mr. Rhodes had never seen anything like it. He started training Jeremiah after hours. "You don't need eyes," he said. "You have something even greater." One rainy night, the community center hosted a small concert. Families gathered in folding chairs. Jeremiah sat at the old upright piano. No stage, no lights, just him and the keys. He played for 7 minutes. When he finished, no one moved. Then, a young woman in the audience took out her phone and said, "The world needs to hear this." She uploaded the video to social media. By morning, the video had millions of views. People shared it everywhere. Blind boy plays like a master. Little genius moves crowd to tears. A child with no sight sees through music. Interviews came. Invitations came. One message stood out. "Your son is invited to audition at the National Music Competition in New York." Competition director Marcia was stunned. Jeremiah just smiled and said, "Do they have a real piano?" The days before the competition were hard. They couldn't afford a flight, so they took a long bus ride. Jeremiah carried his walking stick and a backpack with one sweater and snacks. In the hotel room, he practiced by touching the edge of the nightstand, pretending it was a piano. On the day of the performance, Marcia kissed his forehead and said, "I'll be watching from home. Just play your heart, baby." She couldn't miss work, but she believed in him. So did the world. Back to the present. Victor Hale sat at the judge's table, staring at Jeremiah, still shocked by the melody he just heard. Because Victor recognized it. It was his melody, a private piece, a memory from years ago. Victor once played in a hospital, not as a star, but as a student volunteer. He would go from room to room, playing soft music to help patients sleep. There was one woman, young, tired, kind eyes. He remembered her. She never spoke much, but she smiled every time he played. One night, he composed a soft song beside her bed. He never played it again. He never wrote it down. Yet, here it was, played by a blind boy. How? Victor's heart started beating faster. Could it be? He stood up. Jeremiah turned his head, sensing the movement. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked softly. Victor stared, lost for words. The crowd waited. What would he say? Victor Hale had always been known for 2 things, his piano skills and his pride. He wasn't just a pianist, he was a legend. He had won every music award. He had performed in the world's biggest concert halls. People called him the King of Keys. But Victor was also known for something else: his cold smile. He didn't like mistakes. He didn't like surprises. And he didn't believe in natural talent. In Victor's world, only the trained deserved the stage. So, when a blind boy named Jeremiah Blake played the exact private melody Victor had written years ago, that cold smile faded. His fingers tapped the judge's table. His heart was racing. He stood up, slowly, staring at the boy on stage. The crowd watched, whispering. Why did the great Victor Hale look so confused? Jeremiah looked in Victor's direction, not seeing him, but feeling the tension. Did I play something wrong, sir? He asked softly. Victor didn't reply at first. Then he said in a tight voice, Where did you learn that song? Jeremiah tilted his head. I don't know its name. My mom played it for me when I was little. It was her favorite. Victor blinked. His chest tightened. That melody. He had only played it once, in a hospital, for a woman with tired eyes and a soft smile. Could it be? Could she be the boy's mother? Flashback, 10 years ago. Victor was still a student back then, not yet famous. His teacher had told him, real musicians play from the heart, not just the hands. To practice that, Victor volunteered to play piano at a local hospital. Every week, he would play quiet music for the patients. There was one room he never forgot. A young woman, Marcia, always smiled when he walked in. She never asked for anything. But one day she whispered, Can you play something that feels like hope? Victor had nodded. That night, he created a soft tune, gentle, warm, full of light. Marcia had closed her eyes and said, That sounds like what my son might dream. Victor never saw her again after that week. He forgot the song, or thought he did, until now. Back in the present, Victor stared at Jeremiah. This boy had played that same song, note for note. No sheet music, no mistake, only feeling. The other judges were silent. The crowd didn't know the story, but they could feel something powerful was happening. Victor slowly sat back down, but his cold smile returned. He turned to the microphone. This performance, he said, was unexpected. Some people in the audience nodded, unsure how to feel. Victor's voice was calm, but sharp. A blind boy, no training, playing on this stage. What a story. Jeremiah stayed quiet. Victor continued. People love emotional tales. A poor child with a special gift. But music is not magic. It is skill, discipline, years of hard work. Whispers began in the crowd. Was Victor dismissing the boy? He looked straight ahead, his voice low. This competition is not a charity. It's for the best. Backstage, a staff member ran to the producer. We're losing the audience. People are getting upset. But before the producer could respond, another judge stood up. It was Ms. Rivera, a respected music teacher from Spain. She picked up her mic. With respect, Mr. Hale, she said calmly, music is not just about rules. Sometimes, it is about heart. The crowd clapped. Ms. Rivera turned to Jeremiah. Young man, your music touched this room. You made us feel. That is something even professionals struggle to do. Jeremiah smiled gently. Thank you, ma'am. Victor's jaw tightened. His cold smile froze on his face. He was losing control. For the first time in years, he wasn't the star. A blind boy with no money, no training, no eyes, had stolen the spotlight. Victor leaned back in his chair, but something inside him was breaking. Not just his pride, his memories. The woman in the hospital. Her voice. The music he gave her. And now, her son was here, carrying that same music. Victor stared at Jeremiah with a strange look. Anger? Jealousy? Or was it regret? Jeremiah stood up slowly, ready to leave the stage. The host said, Thank you, Jeremiah. We'll let the judges decide. The boy turned and walked off, using his stick to find his way. As he disappeared behind the curtain, the audience burst into applause. Loud. Long. Real. Victor didn't clap. He just sat there, with a cold smile, and eyes full of storms. Backstage, Jeremiah sat alone in a quiet corner. His fingers gently moved across the edge of a small table, pretending it was a piano. He always did that when he was nervous. He wasn't sure how the judges felt. Victor Hale's voice still echoed in his ears. Music is not magic. This competition is not a charity. Jeremiah tried to stay calm, but a small tear slipped down his cheek. Just then, a voice spoke gently. "Hey, kid." It was Ms. Rivera, the judge who had defended him. "You were brilliant," she said. Jeremiah smiled. "Thank you, ma'am. I was scared." Ms. Rivera knelt beside him. "You have something special, Jeremiah. Don't let anyone dim that light." He nodded. "Do you think I made it to the next round?" Ms. Rivera paused. "I don't know yet, but I know this. The world heard your first note today, and no one will forget it." Meanwhile, in the judge's room, tension was high. Victor Hale stood near the window, arms crossed. "He's just a child," he said. "No technique, no training. We can't send him to the finals." Judge number 2, a young composer named Yeo, disagreed. "He played with more soul than half the professionals I've seen. He moved people." Victor turned sharply. "This is not a movie. It's a music competition." Ms. Rivera stepped in. "Then judge him on the music. And if you're honest, Victor, you'll admit, he played that melody better than even you." Victor's eyes flashed. "That melody," he whispered. "That's mine." The room went quiet. "What do you mean?" Leo asked. Victor didn't answer. He just walked out, his cold smile replaced by something deeper, confusion and fear. That night, Jeremiah and his mother, Marcia, sat together on a video call. She looked tired, still in her nurse uniform, but her eyes were full of pride. "You are amazing, baby," she said. Jeremiah smiled. "People clapped, Mama. Some even cried." Marcia's voice softened. "I wish I could have been there." He asked, "Mama, the song I played, where did you first hear it?" Marcia was quiet. Then she spoke slowly. "I was in the hospital, pregnant with you. I was scared, alone." Jeremiah listened carefully. "Every evening," she continued, "a young man came and played piano in the hallway. One night, I asked him to play something that felt like hope." She paused. "He played that melody. I remembered every note. It helped me believe I could do this, raise you. So I hummed it to you, even after you were born." Jeremiah sat still. "What was his name?" Marcia looked down. "I never asked." "At the hotel, Victor couldn't sleep. He stood by the window, looking at the dark city. A memory flashed in his mind, Marcia's smile, her request. Play something that feels like hope. He had forgotten her until now. Could Jeremiah really be her son? He suddenly felt small. All his awards, all his fame. And now, a blind boy with no shoes polished, no stage experience, no teachers, had reminded him what real music was. Not just perfect notes, but true feeling. Victor sat at the room's piano. His fingers hovered over the keys. And then he played. For the first time in years. No cameras. No audience. Just him. And the memory of a soft smile and a boy with blind eyes. Next morning, the list was posted. Finalists for the next round. Jeremiah waited with other contestants. Some were whispering, "He won't make it." It was just sympathy. Others said, "If he does make it, we're done." No one can beat that emotion. Jeremiah didn't speak. He just waited. The paper was placed on the board. Everyone rushed forward. Jeremiah stood still. A kind girl named Anna read it aloud for him. She smiled. "You made it, Jeremiah. You're in." He didn't jump. He didn't shout. He just whispered, "Thank you, God." As the contestants returned to their rooms, Victor watched from a hallway above. He saw Jeremiah walking slowly, tapping his stick. Then, for a moment, Jeremiah stopped, as if he felt something. He turned his head slightly, in Victor's direction. Victor froze. They couldn't see each other, but it felt like they were standing face to face. Two pianists. One blind, one lost, and both about to play in the final round. The applause for Jeremiah seemed to shake the entire hall, but behind the cheers, a quiet storm was building. Backstage, the judges gathered to make their final decision. Victor Hale didn't speak at first. He just stared at his hands. He had clapped for Jeremiah, but now, doubt filled his heart. Judge Leo broke the silence. There's no question. The boy deserves to win. Ms. Rivera agreed. He didn't just play music, he became the music. All eyes turned to Victor. His voice was low. What if he never plays again? Leo frowned. What are you talking about? Victor stood up. Listen to me. I know that melody. I wrote it, years ago. For his mother. The room fell silent. Ms. Rivera's eyes widened. So it's true. Victor nodded slowly. That boy, he's hers. Flashback, 10 years ago. Victor had only seen Marcia for 1 week. A young nurse, pregnant, full of fear, but with the softest voice. She had asked for a melody that felt like hope. He gave it to her. And then, she disappeared. He never knew her name, but now he knew her son. And her son had taken that one melody and turned it into his whole world. Back in the present, Victor looked around the room. If he wins, he said, he'll be famous. People will pull him in every direction. Fame is not kind. Ms. Rivera looked at him sharply. Are you worried about him? Or are you scared he'll take your place? Victor didn't answer. Because deep down, he didn't know. On stage, the host came forward. Ladies and gentlemen, in a few moments, we'll announce the winner of this year's Grand Talent Competition. Jeremiah stood behind the curtain, holding his white cane. He whispered to himself, I've already won, just by being here. Then he heard a voice. Deep, calm, familiar. Jeremiah. It was Victor. The boy turned slightly. Mr. Hale? Victor stepped closer. I owe you something. Jeremiah listened. That song you played, it was mine. I wrote it for your mother. The boy's face froze. My mother? Victor nodded. She changed my life. She believed in something pure. You brought that back. Jeremiah smiled softly. She believed in you, and she believed in me. Victor looked down, then slowly said, no matter what happens tonight, don't let this world take away your heart. Jeremiah replied, I won't, but maybe you can find yours again too. Victor's eyes filled with tears. He quickly turned and walked away. Back on stage, the lights brightened. The host held the final envelope. This year's winner, the hall grew quiet, is. People held their breath. Jeremiah Blake. The room exploded. Cheering, crying, standing ovation. But Jeremiah just stood still. Not because he didn't hear it, but because he was listening to his heartbeat. As he walked to the center of the stage, he whispered to himself, this is not the end. This is the start. Victor watched from the wings. His heart was heavy, but also lighter than before. After the show, as cameras flashed and people rushed to congratulate Jeremiah, Victor slipped out a side door. He didn't need the lights tonight. Outside, the night was quiet. He walked alone under the stars. For the first time in years, he felt free. But then he heard a voice behind him. Leaving so soon? It was Ms. Rivera. Victor gave a small smile. I'm not the star tonight. She stepped beside him. No, but you were the storm that led us here. He looked up at the sky. Maybe. But now, the storm's over. Meanwhile, Jeremiah sat with his trophy in his lap. He touched it gently, then leaned back. He wasn't thinking about money or fame. He was thinking about music. The kind that comes from silence. The kind that heals. The kind that finds broken hearts and puts them back together. Months had passed since the night Jeremiah won the competition. The world now knew his name. The blind prodigy. The boy with the magic hands. He was invited to talk shows, concerts, and interviews. Everyone wanted a piece of him. But Jeremiah remained the same. Humble, quiet, kind. He still practiced on his old paper keyboard. He still called his mama every night. And he still said, "I'm just a boy who loves sound." One day, Jeremiah returned to his old neighborhood for a visit. The kids on his street ran to him, shouting, "Jeremiah, Jeremiah." He laughed and hugged them all. Then he sat down at a small keyboard in the community center and played. No stage, no lights, just joy. A mother whispered to her child, "That boy reminds us that nothing is impossible." Meanwhile, Victor Hale had changed too. He stopped performing for money. He stopped chasing fame. He started teaching music to kids in hospitals, just like he once did for Marsha. And every time he sat at the piano now, he remembered two things: a melody written for hope, and a blind boy who reminded him what music truly is. One morning, Jeremiah and his mother were invited to a big event. It was called Hearts of Hope, a concert where children from all over the world would perform. Jeremiah was asked to play the final song. As he walked on stage, the crowd grew quiet. But this time, he didn't go alone. He took someone's hand and walked with Victor Hale. People gasped. The former star and the new hero together. They sat side by side. Victor whispered, "Are you ready?" Jeremiah smiled. "I was born ready." And then they played. Two pianos, two hearts, one story. The music rose like sunlight through clouds. It spoke of pain, love, faith, and forgiveness. It felt like a hug from the sky. Some cried. Some held hands. All stood. The music stopped. But no one moved, because in that moment, they weren't watching a concert. They were witnessing a miracle. After the show, a reporter asked Jeremiah, "What message do you have for the world?" Jeremiah thought for a moment, then said, "Don't laugh at someone because they look weak. Don't judge someone because they can't see. Every soul carries light. Some just need music to help them shine." Victor Hale was asked the same question later. He answered quietly, "I once had everything, but I had no heart. That boy gave it back to me." He didn't just play music, he changed everything. Years later, Jeremiah opened a school, not just for music, but for belief. For every child who had been told, "You can't." And at the front of the school, written in simple gold letters, were the words, "The heart behind the hands." And on a quiet day, an old man walked through the halls of the school. He stopped near a piano, placed his hand on the wood, and smiled. It was Victor. He closed his eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Marsha, for asking me to play something that felt like hope."